Yeah, so my name is Alberto. I work in the web content ecosystems team at Google. And we are tell you in this session how it is possible today for publishers to take advantage of the benefits of using AMP when they are publishing content with WordPress. But first, let me put this work, well, this was the first slide. Let me put this work in the context of what my team at Google does. So if you think about, OK, what an ecosystem is, basically, is a community of interacting parts and organisms and their environment. And the important thing here is that every member of that ecosystem is important to all the other members. So you cannot get rid of the trees and then have birds, for example, right? So that's a big deal with global warming, right? So this is the essence of what an ecosystem is. And the same happens with content ecosystem. A content ecosystem is a community of content creators and content consumption participants interacting between themselves and their environment. And there are many of these ecosystems, content ecosystems in the web. And I like to think about the web as a sort of like a federation of these content ecosystems. And for the purpose of my team, there is one important thing, that is all these ecosystems share one goal. The experience that the users get when accessing, consuming, or publishing content in those ecosystems should be an awesome experience. And since AMP is all about achieving an awesome experience for all users, we are interested in seeing how can we bring the power of AMP to as many of these ecosystems as possible. So one of the most relevant content ecosystems, arguably, and we're going to see why, of content ecosystem in the web today is WordPress. WordPress, I can define it as a content management system for websites. And as Malta said, it was one of the earliest adopters of AMP. Historically, when people hear the word WordPress, usually they used to associate it with a platform that enables bloggers to publish their content in an easier way. But WordPress has been evolving steadily since it started back in 2003. And nowadays, it's like basically powers websites across a wide variety of verticals. You name it. Blogging, the initial one, travel, education, real estate, you name it. So it's a very, very powerful platform in this sense. And it's reflected by definitely the largest content management systems out there right now, with 59% of the open source content management systems market share. So that's impressive. And what is more impressive is that nowadays, a third of websites are powered by WordPress. So these stats are very, very impressive. But again, they tell me one thing. So a third of the web is a lot of the web. So there are many, 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 many users, both publishing and consuming content via WordPress. And my goal is all of them should get an awesome experience when they are doing that. So one of the major strengths of the WordPress platform is the flexibility that it offers. And that is reflected by a very, very large and ever-expanding ecosystem of plugins and themes. Okay? So there are like this many on each of those sites. You can use themes and plugins to basically customize your WordPress site in a myriad of ways, in any way you can imagine it. Now, this virtue also can be turned into one of the major challenges of the platform, right? Because even if you take into account plugins that are coded perfectly, that are very performant, and they behave nicely, the probability of having two plugins or more that collide when installed at the same time in a site or affecting the performance of a site is not negligible. And this, what I like to think about, this duality between a virtue and a challenge, it is parallel to the virtue challenging in the open web, right? So in the open web, nothing prevents a developer to basically screw the performance of a site by following development practices that are counterproductive, like loading scripts synchronously, or like not optimizing images and things like that. And even if the developer does an impeccable work and codes a site that is extremely efficient and optimized, installing one third-party JavaScript could spell a performance disaster for the site. So, so if you think about it, AMP emerged as a response to that reality and bringing to the ecosystem a set of design principles and control mechanisms that allow us to create sites that offer predictable performance. And since both AMP and the output of WordPress are just web content, WordPress publishers can also benefit from the power of AMP in order to offer predictable performance on their sites. So when we talk about AMP in WordPress, we basically talk about two things. One is the capabilities enabled by a plugin, and also the integration of that plugin with the other components of a site, like the underlying theme and the other plugins that provide functionality for whatever the site does. So the plugin, as Bart mentioned, the plugin work for enable AMP in WordPress was pioneered by Automattic, and it was developed to satisfy the needs of, probably you have heard about the VIP platform. The VIP platform is a fully managed cloud platform provided by Automattic, and that basically they offer full solutions to their clients. They offer support, customer advice, and so on. And the interesting thing for me is that it has a diverse partner ecosystem around them. And there are basically two types of partners. There are agency partners, that is where most of the advanced WordPress development takes place. And then there are technology partners that basically team up with Automattic to integrate technologies to the VIP platform. Google is one of those partners. For example, if you want to integrate, I don't know, Google Drive to the VIP platform, then we'll be qualified as a technology partner. Now, the plugin definitely satisfies the need that they set for themselves. For the VIP platform, they report like around 700 million page views per month, both across WordPress.com and the VIP platform. And the plugin also has been adopted, relatively good size. There are more than 200,000 installs. And it also has been used as the core of other plugins that have been built around it. Okay? But thinking about the initial goals of the plugin, that it was basically satisfy the needs of the VIP platform that usually have agency partners working with them, the characteristics of the initial plugin implementation make sense. Basically, it's a developer-oriented plugin. Basically, it offers minimal functionality with a set of core abstraction that enable AMP, but then allow developers to extend and customize it to satisfy the needs of specific sites. But that means also that for sites that do not have strong engineering support, the plugin was very difficult to adopt, because you get pages that I'm going to show you in a second that makes it difficult. Basically, as Bart mentioned too, the plugin enabled millions of pages in thousands of sites in WordPress. And on the AMP side, we heard a lot of feedback about the generated pages. And most of the feedback that we heard was like, well, but all the AMP pages look the same. And they look a little bit kind of lame, right? So here on the left, we have so-called canonical AMP, the canonical side, the original content. And on the right is a page that was generated using the plugin version 0.4. And here you can see two problems. One is that there is, doesn't matter how the page on the left looks like. The page on the right is going to look pretty much like this, right? And on the second thing, you can see how basically, that's what I call a visual gap. Right? So there is a little difference between them. And then you see, for example, here, there is not the hamburger menu. The load updates button is not present here. And there is a lot of functionality that is gone. And the reason for this is that you can take this output, tweak the plugin, and then make it look nicer. But if you don't have the engineering support, then you cannot do it, and your pages are going to look like this. So Google and Automattic started collaborating around mid last year, with the purpose of taking the plugin and evolving it to a point in which actually can be adopted at scale. So we started working, and we released version 0.5 a little while after we started collaborating. And this release brought support for new embeds, for example, Vimeo, SoundCloud, Pinterest. We also changed the original version of the plugin. Use a blacklist sanitizer or preprocessor that basically, you have to get rid of things that are not AMP. We changed it for a preprocessor that adds a lot of intelligence to it and also allows the plugin to stay in sync with the AMP specification. So every time that the AMP projects evolve, the plugin stays up to date. We did, quite a bit of code and documentation improvements, and we added a basic UI to add analytics to the site. Short after we finished that, we were all pumped up. So let's move towards the path to getting an all-AMP experience. And by mere chance, somehow we came across with the awesome folks or the XWP engineering team, and we started talking. We are doing this, we are doing that, and it turned out that we shared a lot of our visions, and we decided to start working together. So we joined forces together with Automattic, and not long after our collaboration started, we released 0.6. And the 0.6 is loaded with a lot of new things that I'm very excited about. I'm going to show each of them. Here, for example, you can see before, in the previous version of the plugin, you could only preview the latest post that you were working in AMP. If you wanted to see how the AMP version looked, you can only preview the last post. And the preview functionality was separate from the integrated or the normal workflow in WordPress for doing the previews. Here you can see, this is just the regular WordPress workflow, and now you can see that you can preview the changes in the normal WordPress, and next to it you have the little AMP icon that says, preview how the AMP version looks like. So this is pretty cool because then the developer doesn't have to leave the normal workflow in WordPress to see how AMP is behaving, or the version of AMP is looking like. Other thing is that the initial version of the plugin only supported the post content type. In WordPress, there are different types of content that you can create. Post content type is one of them, and it was the only one supported by the plugin. In this version, we added support for pages. That was one of the things that the community was asking the most. We need support for pages. Here, there's not much to show, only that this is a page, and then it's been converted to AMP. And the other thing that we added is, because of the plugin was evolving, we wanted to give the user the power to say, for this particular piece of content, I want AMP to be disabled. For whatever reason, they have a functionality that is not supported for any reason, so they have now the ability to say, for this particular post, disable AMP. Or vice versa, you can see it as an opt-in, which is actually very good to give the users the capability, although you're going to see soon that this is not going to be needed, and it's very nice. Terry is going to tell you all about it. And another thing that was very cool is, also in WordPress, you have the ability to create what is called custom post types. You can create your own layout, and you define a content type that you create. And before, in the initial versions of the plugin, in order to add AMP support for them, you had to go to the code, like in the lower side of this slide, and you had to manually, say, I'm going to put, this specifically, I want AMP support for this content type. Now, on the upper part, you see now you can do it in the 0.6 version. You can just click and say, I want AMP support for this post content type, and so on. So this is very good because it adds a lot of flexibility and don't require the users to go to the code. Now, besides those, the 0.6 has many other things. We added auto-loading capabilities that basically allows to simplify the code because you don't have to be including all classes and interfaces manually. We integrated the AMP customizer with the regular customizer in the regular WordPress workflow. A lot of, this is important because in the content ecosystem team, one of the things that we want to do is to bring coding and performance best practices to the WordPress ecosystem. And we are applying those principles in the plugin by adding a lot of code quality checking in the build process of the plugin itself. And the 0.6 version also enhanced the preprocessor a lot, added a lot of intelligence, and actually fixed some bugs that prevented the plugin to be actually completely in sync with the AMP specification. Now, since the beginning, when we started this work, we had our sight in an all AMP experience in WordPress. We can call it native AMP or all AMP. And it's an experience in where no per mode is needed. But if there are no visual gaps and no functional gaps between the regular version and the AMP version, then you don't need two versions. And I'm going to invite Thierry, my colleague and friend from XWP, to tell you the progress that we have made towards this goal with version 0.7 of the plugin.
Zero 0.5 and 0.6 included great features, no doubt about that. But like any early versions of softwares, it also came with its limitation. And by that, I mean, until today, the WordPress AMP plugin only converted certain type of pages. Imagine a user coming from Google search and landing on a WordPress AMP article. What they would get is the default styling that the WordPress plugin provides. And that would be the same across all WordPress websites which uses the AMP plugin. Not only that, but when this user is done reading the article and goes and click on the logo to go back to the home page, then they land to a non-AMP version, which provides a completely different visual experience. And that is because, until today, the 0.6 version of the plugin did not convert the home page by default. Now, we've thought with the team, how can we come over these limitations? And we brainstormed, and we came to the conclusion that we needed to combine this non-AMP version of the website with the AMP version into one beautiful native AMP experience. When building beautiful WordPress websites, users and site owners have access to a large built-in library of components, the WordPress components. But these are not all AMP compatible. Now, these obviously expose great challenges. And what we wanted to do is take the power of these WordPress components and make sure that what powers 1/3 of the web today is AMP valid. And in order to achieve that, we had to completely rethink the way the AMP integration in WordPress was done. Well, I'm so proud to announce that through a collaboration with the Google AMP team, as well as our friends at Automattic, we overcame these challenges. And that via the new version, 0.7 beta of the WordPress AMP plugin. Not only does it convert all WordPress components and make them AMP valid, it also allows WordPress developers to continue coding the WordPress way and let the plugin do the rest. And I think the best way to put this in context is to actually look at a real-world example. Before we do that, we're going to look at the website without the AMP plugin. And that is a beautiful news website, and it's a non-AMP website, and it has a fairly complex layout with a drop-down. And on the right, we have a search, which animates on click. And of course, this website looks beautiful on mobile with the hamburger menu. Nobody knows why is it hamburger, but everybody knows what it does. Now, at this stage, before 0.7, people would install the 0.6 version of the plugin, and what they would get when they activate the plugin is the same looking homepage, a non-AMP version of the homepage. And then they would have the same non-AMP version of all the articles, and on top of that, another version with a completely different styling. Now, with 0.7, and we're going to activate the plugin in the admin, we were able to provide this native AMP experience. And let's look at the same website again. This is native AMP in WordPress. We still have our drop-down, We still have our search. The mobile looks as beautiful, and we see the AMP live list in action, allowing us to click and see the latest article, and we obviously still have our drop-down. And while developing this, sometimes I found myself wondering, am I on the AMP? Is the plugin activated? And look at the console, powered by AMP, passing validation indeed. And to give you an idea of the speed that this website is providing, what you're seeing right now is me browsing the website and just recording my screen. That's what we're getting out of this WordPress website. Now, let's recap. There is no longer a need for paid mode. There's only one beautiful version of the website. There is no longer a need to maintain two versions of it. And then from a development perspective, people or companies, like we've heard the Washington Post early on, don't have to put this hard work into converting WordPress components and make them AMP valid. It is done out of the box with the 0.7 release. I mentioned early on, it doesn't only convert the AMP components, it also allows developers to continue coding the WordPress way. And what we see on the screen is a typical WordPress website, WordPress snippet that we would find on any WordPress website today. And what it does is, it just tells WordPress, please anchor a style sheet in my HTML head, like we see on the screen right now. Now, obviously, link, style sheet are not AMP valid, and WordPress developers would have to convert that into inline CSS the AMP way. And now there's no longer a need to do that, because with the plugin, it's done automatically. And we can see the difference here. WordPress developers do not have to change the code snippet we saw early on. The AMP plugin does that for them. And it prints the CSS inline the AMP valid way. Now, we didn't stop there. We want to make it better. And we're working on a prototype which analyzes the HTML DOM and compares it with the CSS that's loading on the page, and make sure that only the CSS needed for this page is printed in the custom style HTML tag. Now, that really much aligns with the AMP philosophy of keeping CSS under 50 kilobytes. As I mentioned earlier on, WordPress is made out of multiple components. And one of the components are widgets. They are small blocks that users can place in the websites in multiple areas. And if we look at the back end of WordPress, we're dropping a gallery widget and selecting images, which is the standard WordPress experience. And we're going to be adding this widget in our sidebar and change the categories widget to be a drop-down. And you'll see why now. So when we look at the front end and we scroll down to our sidebar, this is the without the AMP plugin, right? There's a list of images, and if we inspect the drop-down, we'll see there's inline JavaScript. And this JavaScript is obviously not AMP valid. And instead of developers converting that by themselves, we activate the AMP plugin, and the first thing we see is that we have a beautiful image gallery, and that's leveraging the AMP carousel component, of course. And then for the JavaScript issue, it has been replaced with the AMP bind component, and that allows users to just select a category and get the expected behavior. Now, at XWP, while working on some of the major publishing websites in the world, we have identified that very often they end up replacing the WordPress comments with alternative solutions. And we believe that one of the reasons is because out of the box, the WordPress comments experience is aging a little bit. It's requiring the page to reload. And while converting these WordPress components to be AMP valid, we also wanted to improve the user experience by leveraging some of the AMP components, such as the AMP mustache, the AMP form, the AMP bind, or the AMP live list. So on the page, we're going to scroll down to the list of comments, and I'm going to add a very useful comment, very good feedback, as usual. my name and an email, and then when I post the comment, then the AMP mustache displays the success message, and the AMP live list goes and fetch the comment in the backend and tell us immediately there's a new comment, which I can obviously click on, and then we scroll up and we see the new comments. We haven't left the page, and developers didn't have to do anything on this theme other than wrapping the core comments function with the AMP live list HTML div. They get that out of the box, this new WordPress comments experience. Now, we have seen the style conversions, we've seen the widgets, we've seen the comments, but 0.7 includes a lot more than that. There's pretty much all the WordPress embeds are now converted to be AMP valid, leveraging some of the AMP components, such as the AMP Facebook, AMP Twitter, AMP Video, and so much more. WordPress core components are predictable. We know what to expect from WordPress. And so we could easily convert that to be AMP valid. But with WordPress powering 1/3 of the web and a huge ecosystem of plugins and custom integrations, it's really difficult to predict what's going to be rendered on the page. And while this will be part of the future phases, what we wanted to make sure of is that anything which is rendered on the page is AMP valid. And for that, we took what was before the sanitizer and what we would want to call it the preprocessor, and it essentially takes whatever is rendered on the page, puts it through a funnel, and outputs it in an AMP valid way. While doing that, we obviously saw an opportunity to make things even better. And since we had access to this rendered or this output, we thought, why not automatically including the AMP components? On this page, we see at the bottom it uses 4 AMP components. And under this content, we'll add a snippet, a code snippet using GitHub Gist. In the back end, we just use our snippet. And when we reload the page, if we look at the console right now, we can see that the AMP Gist component JavaScript has already been added to the page. Without the AMP plugin, site owners would have to call developers and say, hey, on page ID 54, I'm using a Gist snippet. Could you please add the Gist component? And that's no longer needed. During the panel talk, there was a question about what about the content creation experience. Well, now we've turned WordPress to be WordPress AMP. But we also wanted the people editing the content to be made aware when they actually add something which is not AMP compatible on the page. And that was really tied with the editorial notification or the editorial workflow. So in the WordPress admin, we see that there's a script tag and an on-click event, which is not allowed in AMP. And if we save the draft, then we see there's a notification saying, hey, this content will fail AMP validation. It will be stripped out anyway, but you should really remove it. And then we remove the event and the disallowed script, and when we save again, the notification is gone. So editors in WordPress now know when they're doing something wrong. And the technology behind that is actually quite cool. It's using the preprocessor, and we have a prototype using the WordPress REST API to which we can send content to, and it gives us a report of what the preprocessor has stripped out from the HTML. That will open the door for so much, and actually even outside of the WordPress context, also maybe other people using this API endpoint. And that would also allow us to inform users when some of the plugins may not be good citizens at this stage, and they will be one day. When doing such improvement on an existing software, backwards compatibility come in mind, of course. And that's really dear to the WordPress community. It's really dear to us as well. While 0.7 is 100% backwards compatible. And that is because to get this new native AMP experience, themes have to add one line of code telling the plugin, hey, I'm AMP native ready. or native AMP ready. And if they don't do that, then the legacy paired mode will just be rendered as usual. So site owners can upgrade to 0.7 with a peace of mind that their website will not break. Now, before I continue, as you would imagine, this is a huge step forward. And it has taken a tremendous amount of work to get there. And I would like you to give a round of applause for the team who's put in an outstanding job to do that. This is not like any release. This is a huge step forward for the WordPress world, and actually for anybody trying to create native AMP websites. This allows WordPress to now power these websites. And I haven't spoken much about Gutenberg and more stuff, really exciting stuff coming. And for that, I'd like to invite Alberto back on stage to tell you more about it.
Thank you, man. Super exciting. I'm so excited about this that I can hide it. So I'm glad that you mentioned Gutenberg, because something that we want to do, as I mentioned before, the WordPress platform has been evolving steadily since the beginning. And the latest thing that is coming for them is Gutenberg, which is a new content creation experience that is going to be rolled out, if I am not mistaken, with WordPress 5.0. Basically, Gutenberg is based on the concept of blocks for content creation. Right now in WordPress, if you want to create different type of content, you have many ways to do it. You have like shortcodes, you have embeds, you have custom post types, you have meta boxes, you have widgets. You have many ways to do things. With Gutenberg, everything is going to be a block. So I believe that Gutenberg is going to revolutionize the way that WordPress is used, because it's going to streamline the creation of content. And because of this, notion of blocks is at the core of Gutenberg, I think that there is strong synergy between AMP and Gutenberg. And let's see why. This is an example of Gutenberg in action. Basically, everything is a block. Here we see that you have different blocks for layout, formatting, standard, and so on. So for example, here, let's create an image. You can go select it from the media library. That's it, and that's a block. And then here you can create a paragraph. This is also a block. And so now we can create an embed. Let's suppose that we want to add a tweet to our post. So you put the URL, and boom, that's it. And here on the right side, you can see that there is the block section there to see how the block is configured, that you can see how the block is laid out, and so on. And then Gutenberg is extensible. It comes with these blocks, but you can say, well, let's add new blocks to the editing experience. Let's suppose that I would like to add a lightbox to Gutenberg, right? So a lightbox is this functionality. I click, and that appears. If I want to do it the standard way, I'm going to have to do the declarative part, and I also have to then put the JavaScript that supports that functionality. But what about if we use AMP components to create Gutenberg blocks, right? The only thing that we would have to do then is to do the declarative part, and AMP is going to take care of all the rest. So it's going to be much easier to create Gutenberg blocks. So definitely, Gutenberg is one thing that we want to do, full integration with it. And remember that I am part of the content ecosystem team, so the work that we do with the AMP plugin is in the bigger context of the WordPress ecosystem as a whole. So we are going to continue working on the AMP plugin to reach as close as possible to this native all AMP experience in WordPress. One of the things that I am excited about is what Andre talked about, server-side rendering for AMP. We are going to port the code that they wrote to PHP and put it also as part of the functionality of the plugin, so that can be integrated then with WordPress caching plugins, so that the AMP pages are already rendered. So that's something that is going to be very powerful. Now, AMP, as I said, in WordPress, you have plugins and you have themes. So there is a lot of work that we want to do in the area of themes to create what I like to refer as progressive themes, that are themes that integrate coding and performance best practices, enable all the new technologies of the web platform, and also integrate seamlessly with the AMP plugin. I mentioned Gutenberg integration is a big deal. We want to continue working on that. And another project that we are working coincidentally with the XW folks as well is called Tide. And Tide is important because we need to empower WordPress users to make decisions about which plugins and themes use based on concrete quality metrics, not only on popularity. Okay, and so the Tide project is seeking to do that. And also, we want to use another project that we are spearheading at Google that is called the HTTP archive. We want to create or keep track of the performance of the WordPress ecosystem as we do things to it. So like, how is the performance today and how we evolve it? It's important to keep track of how things are progressing. And also, we want to continue engaging with the WordPress community in general, with theme and plugin makers, and everybody in the community to make sure that the whole plugin ecosystem is compatible with AMP. There is quite a bit of work there, but I think that is very doable with the work that we are laying out. One particular collaboration that I would like to call out is with a company that is called Marfil. Marfil is a very cool company based in Spain. I think that they have around 80 engineers. And they have been involved with the AMP project for quite a bit. And they have done contributions. And one of the particular things that I'm very interested in is a plugin that they built that is called Marfil Press. Marfil Press is a plugin that was built on top of the AMP plugin that we are working on. And it offers progressive web app capabilities to WordPress sites. Basically, they implemented the AMP shell model on top of the Shadow API, which then allows WordPress publishers to use AMP as an embeddable data unit, which is one of the most powerful things that I like about AMP, is that you can take and embed it anywhere. So we want to have that capability ubiquitous in WordPress. So that's something that there is a lot of room for us to collaborate. They did a lot of things. They also have this what you see, what you get kind of experience that they implemented. So that's something that is very exciting. So certainly the development of AMP in WordPress has come a long way in the since AMP started. And I want to, again, take and acknowledge the XWP team that has done a superb job with us, and also the collaboration that we have with several teams in the Automattic, like the Jetpack, the Themes team, the VIP team. So it's very, very, very remarkable, the work that has been happening, and I'm really looking forward to the future. Thank you.